Hello Eric. In this short screencast, I'm going to give you feedback to last week's summary. So let's start. First of all, I want to applaud you for trying to use your own words. You really try to paraphrase rather than repeat the wording of the speaker, which is good. So keep doing that. I would just say work on the clarity a little bit more. Work on the clarity of what you're saying. So let's start. In the video, we'll have biases, title, very good, name of speaker, argues that, good use of reporting verb. And now let's see what the main idea is. The biases related to racial belongings are still present in contemporary society. Yes, that's part of what it says, but maybe you want to make it a little bit more argumentative. Remember, we keep saying that the main idea should be stated argumentatively. So this is indeed part of the main idea. Biases related, I'm not sure what racial belongings are, but I can understand what you're trying to say. Biases related to racial belongings are still present. I think his argument is a little bit deeper than simply the fact that they're still present. He talks about implicit biases. We have these biases that we are not aware of, but we're prone to those biases. But if we become aware of them, we could fix the problem, something like that. Because remember, half of the video he was describing them, what their characteristics are, and then in the second half he was talking about things that we can do to fix the problem. So maybe all of that should be in the first sentence, so that it's more argumentative. But you have used a good reporting verb there. And of course all the other components, the name of the speaker and all that, it's all there. So just work a little bit on the first sentence. He identifies them. I think he identifies them as he defines them, right? He defines them, or in his definition, implicit. See here, when you said he argues that the bias is related to racial belongings, you can just use the term right from the first sentence. It is the most important key term. That's what it's all about, the whole video. And it's just you're using too many words here. Instead, you can just include the term straight from the beginning. He argues that implicit biases, blah, 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 right? I think that's much better. Instead of mentioning them first and then explaining what his definition is. He identifies them, or he defines them, as a prejudice against a person or group of people. And that's it. You don't need this. So actually it is a good idea, after you've mentioned the implicit biases and what he argues about them, it's a good idea to define them a little bit. It's like an introduction to what they are. So imagine you're done with your first sentence. You've expressed what the main idea is. Now you're saying he defines them as prejudice against a person or group of people, and here you probably want to expand a little bit. Maybe prejudice which can result in hurtful behavior or something like that. Just expand a little bit to make a full sentence, right? So up to now, you've discussed the main idea, the argument, you've introduced them a little bit, those biases. Now let's move on. So I think this is a bit informal. You want to say something like Hockett argues or states or describes them as, or Hockett mentions 3 characteristics or something like that. Again, very good idea to use your own wording here. characterized by three features. That's nice. You found a good synonym. Very good. Which occur, now here, I'm not sure that this is a very good sentence structure here. Because you're trying to describe the three characteristics all in one sentence, but this relative clause does not work because it makes it sound like the features occur on a subconscious level. You see, this which, what does that refer to? The features or the biases, right? So I think it's much better to just describe or discuss each one of them in its own separate sentence. And actually what you've done here, you've mentioned them once, the three features, and then you mention them again. This time you devote a sentence, a separate sentence to each one of them. So that's really unnecessary repetition. You see, that's what makes you go over the word limit. There's no need for that. Just go straight into discussing each one of them in turn. First, blah blah blah. Second, third, or you could use other cohesive devices like additionally or hawk it also, blah blah blah, right? So there is no need to do it twice. First mention them, then again mention them one by one. That's just in this short summary, you cannot afford to waste this kind of a whole sentence on that, right? But your description is quite good of each bias. According to speakers, the first appears out of a person's conscious. I'm not very sure what that means. And usually is not directly recognizable by the individuals themselves. So that's good. That's indeed what he was saying. It's a good supporting idea. It's a bit vague. What do you mean by appears out of a person's conscious? I mean, isn't it? He said that they are subconscious, right? So I'm not sure what it means to say that a character, first of all, it's a characteristic or a character, appears out of a person's conscious. It's just unclear. Are you trying to say that they are unconscious? And usually not directly recognizable by the individuals themselves. I think that would be much more clear. Just say they're unconscious. Okay. And it's a characteristic, not a character. The second feature of implicit bias is that it comes contrary to people's minds. I'm not very sure what that means again. It comes contrary to people's minds. In other words, the person's claims and deeds differ from each other. Okay, this is a little bit more clear. So what you're saying is that, or what the speaker was saying is that again, it's not very precise, this idea. What he did say was, we think we believe our stated beliefs. We think we are all about diversity and inclusion, and we're all believe in democracy and all these things, but really, implicitly, our unconscious biases, there's all these biases and prejudices against others. That's what he's saying. So how would you phrase that? What he says is that they run counter to our stated beliefs, right? So again, you did a good job to try and paraphrase it, but you ended up with something that's not exactly clear. This is a little bit more clear. We believe one thing. We think we believe one thing, but then we end up doing something else. Maybe. It's sort of clear. But here, this one, it comes contrary to people's minds. You want to rephrase that. Just make it clear. Okay? And the last character of implicit characteristic, right, of implicit bias is identified by as the individual's hasty automatic association with a stereotype towards a particular. This is much clearer. This is much better, right? They are hasty and automatic. Okay, good. So far in this paragraph, look at how much space you've devoted to the description of the three characteristics. And he does that in the video. But then he spends the second half of the video discussing the things we need to do about them. And look, there's only one sentence for that. So it's a little bit not very well balanced, right? You want to make this more concise, this section, and then expand on this one a little bit. Because you've tried all in one sentence, you've tried to basically discuss all the three recommendations. And you can do that. Maybe with you can separate the description with semicolons, so the description of each one. But I would advise just use three different sentences. So further, he discusses or recommends or discusses steps that we can take to solve the issue, and then you can talk about them one by one. So would help to rightfully diagnose, prevent and reduce a sense of shame. Yeah, you see, that's just not enough, because he spends a lot of time talking about the three steps we need to take, and here you've said it very telegraphically. You need to expand on that. And again, I would suggest expand with a sentence or an extended clause discussing each one of them. If you decide to put it all in one sentence, you would use semicolons. So let's go back to the three different recommendations. So the first one is rightfully diagnose. He does talk about diagnosis. We need to become aware of the problem, of our own biases. That's what he meant, right? Like a sick person, if you know that you're sick, you've placed the correct diagnosis, then you know how to treat that particular illness. So in the same way with our biases, when we're aware of our biases, we can start fixing the problem, right? So that's the first thing we need to do, the first recommendation. Prevent. See, with one word, he didn't mention prevention, a preventative approach. And what he meant by that was we need to try and prevent situations where biases can occur. We need to preempt, to put ourselves, to imagine ourselves, will I be biased in this particular situation? And in that way we prevent them. So you see, one word is just not enough to make that clear, you see. And finally, the third, he does mention reducing a sense of shame, but he meant it more like we need to openly discuss our biases without a feeling of shame, because only then can we start fixing that problem. So you definitely can spend a little bit more here, expand on these and make them much clearer. Okay. In conclusion, the speaker points out that individuals have to do the internal work to recognize implicit bias. For external work of diminishing biases to be possible, it's a little bit unclear, but I get the point. You could phrase it more clearly. So overall, that's what I would say. Just work on the phrasing a little bit. The structure is quite good, other than that repetition in the first half of your paragraph. But overall, you have included the idea.